Shabbat Shalom. Good morning, everybody. I am here with our wonderful colleagues on Wednesday, June 5th from the Gann Chapel. This is going to be shown on Shabbat of June 8th. This is our final Talmud class of the year, and we wanted to end on a high note with a study of a passage that is so powerful, and it speaks to such a powerful moment of two parties making a covenantal commitment to one another. We would call it, in our idiom, a proposal story. When a couple, when one person gets down on their knee and asks the other, will you marry me? And that is the climax of our Haftarah, and it's a proposal story, and we usually think of a proposal story as a once-in-a-lifetime deal, and you just hold on to that memory forever. And yet, Jewish liturgy takes the proposal story, which is the climax of our Haftarah today, and it puts it into our Siddur every single day. And what does it mean to reenact a proposal story every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? And what is Jewish tradition getting at when it makes Hosea's proclamation at the end of our Haftarah, June 8th, part of the daily way that we wake up and face the world? So let's thank God for the gift of learning Torah together, and then we'll jump into our content. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Va'arev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu v'chi amcha beit Yisrael, v'nihya anachnu v'tzatza'enu v'tzatza'ei amcha beit Yisrael, kulanu yodei shemecha v'lomdei Toratecha lishma. Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah la'amo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. So our Haftarah for Bamidbar is from the prophet Hosea, and it begins with chapter 2 of Hosea. Chapter 1 is the backstory, which is, as you know, the biblical Israel has this little problem with idolatry, and they worship the golden calf, the sin of the golden calf. They worship the gods of the Midianite and Moabite women in Numbers 25 at Baal Peor. And this prophet Hosea is told by God, or he says he's told by God, why don't you embody the faithlessness of the people of Israel? By the way, Shavuot, which is next week, is supposed to be the wedding of God and Israel. It's a little heteronormative. I know it's Pride Shabbat, but God is the groom, and Israel is the bride, and Sinai is the chuppah, and the Torah is the ketubah. And after this wedding of God and Israel that we're supposed to mark on Shavuot, what happens is Israel strays and follows false gods. And so God says to this prophet Hosea, I married Israel at Sinai, and they've been faithless. Why don't you embody this? So God tells Hosea, marry a woman who is a prostitute, and her name is Gomer. Marry Gomer the prostitute, and they end up having 3 kids, a son, a daughter, and a son. And each of the children is given a name like, you're not going to be accepted, or not my children, etc., given really horrible names to kind of embody what happens when there is a lack of faith in a marriage. That's chapter 1, not part of our Haftarah, the backstory to the Haftarah. And then the Haftarah begins, which we read Erev Shavuot. Hey, this is a troubled marriage, but troubled marriages can get better and can heal. And it ends up with Israel somehow doing teshuvah, and God saying, I will take you back in love. And the very end of the Haftarah, this Hosea and this prostitute, they kind of recommit, and God and Israel recommit. And God says the following to the people of Israel at the end of this Haftarah, even after the golden calf, even after the sin of Baal Peor, even after all the idolatry, God says, that's what's known as the 3 ve'eras tichlis. Ve'eras tichli la'olam. I, God, will betroth you, Israel, forever, like we are married forever. Ve'eras tichli betzedek uva mishpat uva chesed uva rachamim. I'm going to betroth you, the people of Israel, with justice and righteousness and kindness and goodness. Ve'rastich li be'emunah. I'm going to betroth you with faithfulness and v'yadad Adonai. And if you can do that, then you will know God. In other words, the way to God is through really good human relationships, really honest, sacred relationships marked with justice and kindness and goodness. And that's how you get to God. That's how the Haftarah ends. And those climactic lines are part of our experience when we put on tefillin every single day. So I want to begin with those of you who do put on tefillin every single day or regularly. How do you experience these lines? From the end of Hosea, I will betroth you to me forever, and I'll betroth you to me in justice and righteousness, and I'll betroth you to me with faithfulness, and then you'll know God. What do you think about when you put on tefillin? What do you think about when you say those lines?
Well, I think about betrothal as kind of like an engagement, right? You're not married yet, but there's that commitment. So the idea of putting on tefillin every day means that you don't put on tefillin one and done. You put on tefillin every day because that commitment needs to be renewed every day. And when you do that every day, it helps remind you of what that commitment really means, the mitzvot, as you always talk about, the head, hand, heart, and how that really engages our daily lives.
And do you think about what those words mean when you put on your tefillin in the morning at 7 o'clock? Are you actually thinking about the meaning of these words?
Usually not, because I'm very sleepy
at
that time. But if I think about it, to me, it's comparable to the phrase Shirul Adonai Shir Hadash that we recite every Friday when we sing. That although you may not be doing a new melody, you have to put a different energy every time you do it, because the commitment is new again. And this is the same. I take it in the same way.
And Elisa, what about you? Because I know you have a tefillin practice. When you put on tefillin, what do you think about when you say these lines?
I'm much more in Elias's camp these days. I used to have, I feel like, a much more intentional and present practice. I would say now my practice is usually there's somebody hanging on me while I'm trying to focus. So it's a little different. I remember there was a time in my life when I used to really focus on these lines, and I had a very distinct sense of me committing myself to God and feeling God's presence and wrapping with each wrap a layer of commitment that first you commit eternally and without any qualifications, and then you commit in thoughtful and righteousness and justice and goodness, that you're thinking about the ways that you're going to commit your partnership, and then you commit with just trusting and relying in God. And that used to be my thought process.
And then Nader came along.
And now I feel like most of the times I'm like, he's climbing on me. I'm trying to get him to be focused or trying to turn on Miss Rachel so that I can, it's a really different davening experience.
Yeah. So let's just bracket that and note there is the problem that very often our liturgy, which contains gorgeous words and gorgeous ideals and gorgeous values for lots of reasons, maybe a beautiful child hanging on you, or maybe it suffers from familiarity like wallpaper, you just stop seeing it. We should come back to that if we have time. How do we make these gorgeous words live? But I want to just talk about why Jewish tradition has seen fit to take kind of a once-in-a-lifetime deal, like your proposal story, and make it part of the everyday Sunday through Friday liturgy, where precisely it becomes wallpaper. So I wanted to offer a few different reasons and invite your thoughts on that. So this week we begin Bamidbar, and in Eitz Chaim Chumash, Harold Kushner quotes Rabbi Hirsch, who notes that there is Leviticus Israel and wilderness Israel, Bamidbar Israel. Vayikra Israel is Kadoshim Tihiyu, Ki Kadosh Ani Adonai Elohechem, you shall be holy, because I, the Lord your God, am holy. And Bamidbar Israel, according to Rabbi Hirsch and the Eitz Chaim Chumash, is mumbling and grumbling, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, we used to get leeks for free in Egypt, why did you take us out of Egypt to die in the desert? In other words, there's an ideal version of Israel and a real version of Israel, just like there's an ideal version of us and a real version of us. And I'm wondering whether the reason the rabbis took this proclamation of betrothal is to remind us that there's always a gap between the ideal and the real, and we need to recommit to our highest ideals every single day to try to close that gap. And I'm wondering, what do you think about Rabbi Hirsch's observation, and what do you think about daily practices that help us become the better versions of ourselves?
Well, I'm also thinking about, when the Verestich became part of our liturgy, and that's relatively later. And to think about that, it's not only Leviticus and Bimidbar. It's also, once the people were in the land, there's a lot of evidence that we were not particularly monotheistic, that a lot of people, a lot of our ancestors were not only worshiping Adonai, but worshiping other gods. And so maybe this practice came in later to help us recommit to that ideal as well.
Michelle, how do you try to bridge the gap between the best version of you and the day-to-day not best version of you?
I don't know. I'm still, for me, the words of Verestichli are so bound into the context in such an important way, in such a critical way, because what they say when you pull it out of the context is, it's a love story. It's so beautiful. In fact, I said these words on my wedding day. They're so inspiring.
This is what
right?
you said to Mike.
Yes, we can talk later whether that was a wise decision or I should have gone with Anila Dodiva Dodili, which was a lot shorter.
Right.
But nevertheless, the Aristichli, like the power of these words and the idea that I put you and I put this relationship at the core of who I am. Now that's something that I want to say. I want to say that at my wedding. I want to say that every day. But the context of the Haftarah the context that we're pulling from is really troubling and deeply problematic, and it's about sort of a darkness that underlies. And I think in that interplay between these two spaces of that exquisite love and the incredible pain is a promise from God that I will be with you in both places. And I think that matters, right? It's not just how do I bridge this so that my ideal is here and my real is here, but actually it's a recipe for a bridge between the two, that somehow that when you put God into that space, you have the possibility of redeeming the gap.
In other words, all of us have the ideal us and the real us, which is not the ideal us. And you're suggesting, just like this marriage was far from ideal for much of the marriage, that God is the through line in all these different chapters. And it's, in a way, is it reassuring to you to think of God as present in the dark spaces as well?
1,000%, because that there is, Rabbi Shai Held puts it as, Judaism often rejects some of these ideas that have been more popularized in Christianity, like grace, right? But grace is really here, this idea that it's not necessarily when I'm at my best that I am worthy of love, but even when things are difficult, even when I'm at my worst, even when the world is at its worst, God is there to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I just want to marinate on that for a second, Michelle, because this is the Shabbat before Shavuot, and it's the Shabbat, it's as if it were the Ufruf weekend of God and the Jewish people. It's the Ufruf weekend. The big wedding is going to be on Tuesday night. So this is Shabbos, this is the Ufruf between God and the Jewish people. And what we know is that kind of no sooner do they have their wedding at Sinai, and God says, you shall not have any gods besides me, and don't make any idols. Like literally before the paint is dry, the Israelites do the sin of the golden calf, etc. And so we're immediately focused, and we know this during the Ufruf Shabbos. What do you make of the fact that the Shabbat before Shavuot, we have such a troubled depiction of a marriage, of a prophet and a prostitute? And like as a modern person, it's so troubling that our text would use a prostitute in this way, and that a prophet would have children with a prostitute to name them names that are horrible names, etc. And yet, at the end, we have this beautiful language about eternal commitment and betrothal. What does that say about, what does it say to us now, given the dark year we have been working our way through?
Yeah, to me, it fills me with a sense of possibility because, as we've said multiple times here in this space, our story's not over.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it makes us, it makes life more approachable and accessible, that we're not given a perfect marriage of a perfect couple and everything is happy. We're given a really troubled marriage of a troubled couple, and everything can be redeemed. And that seems to be the message of this line and of the Haftarah, and it's right before Shavuot. I want to talk about another. So one angle is this helps us bridge the gap between ourselves as we are and ourselves as we aspire to be, and it puts God in both universes in both chapters. I also want to talk about a second life lesson from this, which is if you think about your proposal story, or you think about you're saying these lines to Mike Robinson under the chuppah, you think about that as a once-in-a-lifetime deal, right? Like I remember, we know, Shira and I have a proposal story. Many couples have a proposal story, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime deal. And yet, our Siddur takes this and makes it every day. I want to dwell on what that does. Like, what does that do to time when exceptional once-in-a-lifetime moments are now made part of literally your daily routine? And I want to share a Devar Torah that I don't know where it comes from. I didn't come up with this, but it's a Devar Torah on the 7th Sheva Bracha, where there's a list, and it's in the packet. It's a list of 10 synonyms for joy. 2 of those synonyms for joy are sason and simcha, which are in the 7th Sheva Bracha. And the Devar Torah, again, I didn't come up with it, but I remember it, and I don't know who the origin of it is. Sason and simcha are both translated as joy, but they're very different. Sason is the jolt of joy, the burst of joy for a once-in-a-lifetime unrepeatable event. Like, we're finally pregnant, that feeling, or our baby is born and our baby is healthy and you're holding your child for the first time, or we're under the chuppah, we're married, finally we're married. That's sason, like once in a lifetime. And simcha, by contrast, is the joy that comes from day-to-day sustained and sustainable goodness. Day-to-day sustained and sustainable healthy habits that imbue your cosmos and your own world with goodness and decency, and that make you happy. So one is unrepeatable, and the other, simcha, is by its very nature, it's simcha because it's repeatable every day. It's what you can bank on. It's what you can depend on. And you need sason, you need the once in a lifetime, you need the wow, we have a baby, and wow, we're married, and you need simcha. It's like Monday morning in February, and I can still find joy. And I'm wondering how you think about those 2 categories, sason and simcha, and what this tradition of saying these beautiful lines every day does, and what our life would look like if we could really live with an eye towards simcha, in the sense of this is sustainable, it's February, it's cold, it's snowy, it's icy, we're in the middle of this dark season, but I can still find simcha. What do these categories mean to you guys?
To me, my first reaction is sason is much easier to achieve than simcha, because if we are blessed enough, you can experience sason in many aspects of your life. Obviously, the biggest one was Argentina winning the World Cup for me. Yes. But that was really sason. It's like a peak in a moment. I mean, I should say my wedding and the birth of my kids as well. Simcha, the issue with simcha, the challenge with simcha, using a favorite word of Aliza, is that you can get easily used to something that it's a blessing, but it's in front of your eyes and you don't see it. And that's the challenge. The challenge is to try to find, we get so involved in our daily routines and we have so much beauty and so much blessings, but not necessarily we appreciate them every day. So that's much more difficult.
My Rabbi Reb Zalman Schachter Shalom Yalav Shalom used to have a teaching that you should have those sason moments in your back pocket, and that when you're waiting in line at the bank or when you're stuck in traffic, that you should pull them out and revisit them. I think in this way, because I think, Elias, you're totally right that the authenticity of joy that happens in a once in a lifetime moment, you don't have to work for it. It's there. And I think the spiritual work of this prayer is to get there without having that once in a lifetime moment. And I think it's very much what you were talking about, Michelle, the practice of building joy, the practice of building connection, the practice of building sacred moments. And that's also true for marriage. Like, you know, it's an interesting thing because Wes, you were talking about this as like a less than ideal marriage. I actually just think it's marriage. Like, you marry the person you marry, and you marry all their stuff, and you marry all the challenges. And my mom used to say, like, fixer-uppers are good in houses, they're not good in partners. Like, you want to marry somebody that you're good with the bones, you're good with who they are, and you're okay with everything that is, because marrying somebody and expecting them to change that's not possible. You're marrying the person you're marrying. That's who they are. Congratulations. You get to be there with that person for life. So what does that look like? And I think that's like, this is a marriage of reality. And in an ideal world, God is okay with the people that, you know, the Israel that God is marrying. I think God very much thinks that marrying the Israelites are going to radically transform them, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, you know, and as I'm hearing you talk about that, Elisa, like just fixer-uppers are good with houses but not with partners. I think that's also true of our homes and homelands, right? Like America, love America, but Lord, you know, the bones of America are what they are. We've made some growth and improvement, but, you know, we're still a work in progress towards a more perfect union. And the same thing in Israel, obviously, towards the Israel that we all dream of. And I think the challenge of simcha is to find the simcha in the face of all that imperfection. So those are two resonances so far. One is to shore up the gap between the ideal of who we want to be and the real, and God can be present in both chapters. The second is the sason and simcha, finding deep meaning and connection in the everyday, in the face of imperfect that doesn't change. Here's the third resonance of this prayer, and I want to end our year of study with this, which is, if you look at, so here's what we say every day. We say every day, I'm going to look at the middle proclamation. Verastich li, I'll betroth myself to you, but tzedek, with righteousness, uv'mishpat, or justice and righteousness, uv'chesed uv'rachamim, and kindness and compassion. And to me, this is the challenge of living our values. Like, most of us have values. But the question is, do we live our values? It's like the Seinfeld about the car reservation. It's one thing to take the car reservation, but you actually have the car with the car reservation, right? Like, it's one thing to have values, but do we live our values? And I'm wondering, number one, what's your approach to that conundrum, living our values, not just having values, but living our values? And number two, is the recitation of liturgy with a child hanging on you, or when you're sleepy at 7 in the morning, is that a helpful gadfly to us to live our values?
Yeah, I would say yes to your last question. Now, what I try to do, you know, and I know it's like during the day and in the moment, you know, sometimes I have to catch myself and say, wait a minute, that's really not how I should be responding or doing or thinking, and it's hard. But what I try to do is every morning when I'm here for Minyan, I come and sit down in this room 10 minutes before Minyan starts, and when I get my tefillin on, and then I try to think about what these words mean and how looking at the rest of the day, I can try to approach the rest of the day trying to live my values. And then you know, then the day starts, and then sometimes you're not really there, but thinking about and trying to catch yourself, I think is doing this on a daily basis is a reminder how to sometimes stop yourself from reacting in certain ways.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone else want to reflect
Elias, you awake?
on the challenge of living values that we have that sometimes are hard in practice?
I'll just say, I think sometimes articulating our values is helpful, even if if we're not on it yet, that just saying it and having it be the practice that you're owning it can help you to do it even when you're not fully there and not fully conscious. And I think the reality of life is we'd like to pretend, we'd like to think that we are fully conscious in every moment, and most of us kind of go through world on autopilot. And so our spiritual work is to come out of autopilot into presence, and this is a tool that we can use to get there.
Well, I want to just close this conversation with, I love coming to Minyan here and putting on tefillin. And I'll tell you what the resonance of this line is for me, which is, and it's really for all aspects of my life, which is I really feel like I have to earn it every single day. And that these lines tell you that you've never arrived, you have to earn it. So I always think about, like, Shira and my kids disagree with this lens. They don't think it's a healthy lens, but I think it's a healthy lens. I feel like I need to earn Shira's yes every day. Right? Like, I can't, the fact that we have 39 years is nice, but that doesn't mean that today it's earned. I need to earn it every day. I feel like I need to work on my very imperfect relationship with God every day. That's why we're always recommitting and re-betrothing, because, like, we got to do this again today. I feel very much like that as a rabbi. You're not judged on your finest hour. You're judged on your final hour. You're judged on today. The fact that you have X number of years that you've done good service literally means nothing. Literally means nothing. It's what did you do today? You can screw up 40 years with one bad day. You can screw up 40 years with one bad decision. And so, like, to me, the resonance of this is that on the commitments that matter most to us, our spouse, our children, our siblings, our parents, our community, our work as clergy, we have to earn it every day. And we're kind of like, and that's that moment of betrothal is you're on your bended knee saying, will you make an eternal covenant to me? And the way you keep an eternal covenant alive is to recommit to it every day. That's the resonance of Ve'eras Tichli. And I just want to say a bunch of thank yous. First of all, I want to thank you, Elias and Eliza and Michelle and Dan, for being just the best thought partners and dialogue partners. And I do want to apologize for the fact that over much of the course of the year, I've really been struggling in a dark place, and I have not hid that fact. And you've just been really great partners to work through those issues with. I want to thank Andrew Hanold, who's the man behind the scenes, who has taped every one of these classes with endless patience. And I want to thank all of you who have followed our class and emailed us, and it's just a gift and a blessing to learn with you. And so we're going to close with
we
Kaddish.
want to thank you
thank
for
you.
creating this sacred space for all of us to learn together.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're going to end with a song.
Yes, Kaddish de Rabbanan, perfect song to end a year of study. For our teachers and their students and the students of their students, we ask for peace and loving kindness, and let us say Amen. And for those who study Torah here and everywhere, may they be blessed with all they need, and let us say Amen. We ask for peace and loving kindness, and let us say Amen. We ask for peace and loving kindness, and let us say Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you again the first Shabbat after Labor Day. Have a wonderful summer.